Hey everyone, Ill Factor here from beatacademy.com. In this video, I'm going to walk you through a couple pointers that can help you bring life to your bass lines when creating them from scratch or just creating them around a chord progression that you already have. So let's go ahead and dive right in. So I've got a simple beat put up here, and this is a construction kit from a sample pack that I've created highlighting, different genres, and it's really great just to kind of help you get inspired and get ideas moving right away. At the end of the video, I'll show you how you can download this sample pack absolutely free. So let's go ahead and play the loop and see what kind of bass line we can incorporate. All right, we've got this synth, this gated synth playing a simple chord progression. So let's start off by just creating a simple bass line. Now, one of the most basic and simple bass lines that you can create, and maybe in this type of genre, is one where the bass line is just simply playing the root note and following the chord progression. So let me give you an example. Now, that's a basic bass line, so let's go ahead and open that and see what's going on. Now, we're basically just playing the root note of the chord progression whenever that chord progression changes. Now, with that being said, that still leaves us with a bass line that is just pretty bland. And I want to add some life to it. So let's record another bass line. This time I'm going to add a couple notes transitioning from one note to the other and see what difference it makes. So now we've got some movement. We see some notes happening here. We're still playing the chord progression notes. Like, we're still playing the root notes of that, and we're anchoring it down at the downbeat of when those chord progressions happen. And so that's still important. I didn't want to have a different note happening at those times. So we see that here. But what was really important is now we have these notes that we're incorporating to just kind of give a little bit more movement and walk before we switch or transition to another note. So once again, let's play the bass line now with the new notes. And what you might have noticed is we're playing an octave lower. Let's audition this. So this note is an octave lower of what we played last time. So having the octave higher. Now here's the reason why I went to the octave lower here with that bass load. See, these notes that we're using here to walk now, or just add some life to the transition from one note to the other, I've already played that note. So I've introduced it. I've gone higher than the original, the note here. And we're going to shift all the way down. So the way I did that is I'm walking up because going back down to this note here is going to be a bigger drastic change. If I went walking up to maybe a note here, it wouldn't be that drastic of a change in the bass line. And that's really what gives a lot of the life and dynamics to a lot of the melodies that you might be writing with your bass lines. You have this big gap here from the E3 all the way down to the G2. And so if I go right back up, it would kind of just, it doesn't feel, it's staying in that range here. And so it walks, when I go back to the octave down, it walks down and it actually just feels a lot better and also a lot fuller in the frequency spectrum. So let's see what we got, turning this off and going back down to this octave. Now, choosing the right notes is a big part of creating a great bass line. But so is having the right rhythm and creating the overall pocket of the bass line. And having it complement the drums well is an essential part of having a great bass line. And it really changes one from being a bland, vanilla bass line to one that gives life, overall dynamics to your music. So we notice here that that this note that's being held, the first note, if we were to shorten that, change the rhythm of this, it doesn't give the lasting impact that it would if we held the note out for the whole duration of that first chord progression. So we hold it out. And basically what I'm doing is, if I can bring the bass line next to the kick, this is what we'll do here. I want to make sure that that kick hits the first note of the bass line. And then I'm essentially just going to stretch the note over to the second kick that we see. And what I'm doing is I'm really just introducing the next note where the kick comes in. And that's good because that's the essential downbeat. And that ultimately is going to create a better groove or better pocket between the drums and the bass. So once again, if we shorten that bass line and maybe even move that note here, even though on the grid it looks legit and it makes sense, but adds a whole nother rhythm. So we want to go ahead and put that back, extend the note, and introduce this note. Now I know it's a little off, so what I'll do is I'll just nudge that over. And I'm going to introduce that on the beat 3 of that bar, and then sneak this note in between so that we can land on beat 4, the snare right here. So the kick and the next note transitioning on the backbeat. And I'm not adding too much movement in the bass line because I also want it to breathe. I want the bass line to complement the drums, not overwhelm the drums. Let the drums create the groove. We've got that nice little loop happening there. And so just the bass anchor and transitioning from one note to the other with some extra notes adds overall life. And so now I can go back and take off a little bit of the high end and get it more of a low end bass type of sound. And let's see what that vibe's like. Now let's head into another folder in the sample pack and go towards another type of feel, maybe something like a throwback 80s pop type of vibe. So here are the drums from that sample pack. So let's go ahead and focus on creating a bass line to fit this vibe. Now more importantly, I want to focus in on what notes to choose when creating a bass line, because in this case, we don't really have any chords to follow. And so the bass line is going to predominantly be driving the melody and the overall groove and the vibe. So let's start by just picking F. And we're going to do this in the key of F major. Now, I'm just doing this to demonstrate what notes to choose from. But when you choose the key, the progression that you're going to write your song in, you just base it off the notes that belong in that specific key. So in this case, for the purpose of this video, we're going to choose F major. So those are the notes that belong in the key of F major. There's one flat, and that's B flat. So what we're going to do is just highlight the first, the third, and the fifth notes in that scale. So let's start with F. Draw that out. And then let's go to the third, which if you walk up semitones would be 1, 2, 3, 4. So they're 4 semitones apart. And that would be A. And then we head over to C, which would be the fifth. And then we go an octave higher to F. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the starting position here, and I'm also going to move the starting position of the clip itself here. And we're going to use this as a guide. So we have our F, our A, our C, and our octave here. So you can kind of more or less gauge where the first, the third, and the fifth are when you're composing or writing your notes. So you could probably start with the root here, the first note of that progression. We have F. And then what you want to do is kind of bounce around the third, the fifth, and create walking or intervals to go interchange between those notes. So let's see what that sounds like. So we have F, and then let's just try writing in the A here, and maybe going back to F. So now is where we integrate syncopation. So we're going to create some timing here, and that's why I'll look at some of the kick drum patterns here and just move this over a little bit. And move it right there. And maybe zoom in so the grid can give me some more options. That's cool. I like that little upbeat here because we see that the kick here lines up with that upbeat. Now you can also play syncopation with the bass notes away from the kick to create some more syncopation and rhythm, that'll be fine too. But let's just keep moving with this pattern. Now, this is a little boring if we just keep going from the first to the third and back to the first. So depending on the notes that you're choosing will dictate the mood more or less. So if we went from F to, let's say, the fifth, C, and then introduce the third here, and then brought in, let's say, that B flat, which is A sharp, and so add some syncopation in there. Now, going from your first to the fifth kind of makes it a little happy. All right, so that's what I'm talking about, is choosing these notes that are really going to help determine the overall mood and the vibe that you're trying to get across when you're creating your bass lines. So you don't necessarily have to always go to the roots of the chord progression. You can move around, hit the thirds, the fifths, but let's try moving around, maybe from F to an octave higher, see what we get. And we can repeat that. So take the time to just experiment by choosing between these intervals. Look at the difference between going from the first F to, let's say, the A, the third. There's anticipation there, right? So we get that first and the third. It feels like we want to resolve to either the fifth or somewhere else. We don't necessarily want to hear the same note again. So what if we did that? Right? So you can experiment with that. You can also experiment, like I said, with notes that will walk towards that, those specific notes. So how about we do F, and how about just the next note up? Now that interval from the 1 to the 2 of that scale came off a little, like with more attitude, right? We've got that, and then we have that's that fifth, which is good. Now let's just add some rhythm there. And we've got that here, and then maybe add a that's a good note to go to from here, because we're resolving from that fifth to there. And let's just change the timing. And then repeat that process again. And duplicate. And then maybe add some different variation here. Back to the third. And let's go ahead and close this off. Now it might throw us off that it says 2 to 6. So what I'm going to do is just right click here and say set bar 1, beat 1 here. There we go. That way I have an accurate bar count. Now we can go to the third to resolve, or you can, or any other note, or maybe an octave higher. So we might want to change a couple of things around, but this is a great way to kind of start getting familiar with where to go and where to navigate when creating your bass lines. You don't want to just stay put with the root note all the time on the downbeat of each beat of each bar, because then you get your bland and boring bass lines. So adding some syncopation, adding some intervals, and even going up an octave can really help bring a lot of life to the bass lines that you're incorporating in your music. Well, I hope this video has been helpful for you. And as I mentioned earlier, my gift to you for watching this video is a sample pack loaded with construction kits covering multiple genres, everything from hip hop, dance, pop, rock, EDM. It's all included in here in about 10 different construction kits that are all broken down with all the individual elements in them, as well as some one-shots too. I've put some kicks in there, snares, some different sounds from percussions and stuff like that, and transition effects as well. This is a great sample kit to have to just hit the ground running, to motivate you, or even to add into your current production, just to add some inspiration to your current workflow. This is yours absolutely free. all you got to do is just click the link below in the description box, give me your email, and I'll send this to you right away. You can access this by visiting www.beatacademy.com/pack. Just click the link below in the description box, and I'll be more than happy to send this to you absolutely free. Once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.